Clara carried a tray of petit fours with care, weaving through the tables with a smile that reflected pride in a job well done. She was the head chef of the catering team, serving this luxurious event. Despite her title, Clara didn't confine herself to the kitchen. She made it a point to oversee every detail, ensuring everything was flawless. She was a woman full of life, with generous curves and a sparkle in her eyes that defied the stereotypical image of someone unsure of themselves. Even so, Clara bore an ongoing inner struggle. She had learned to smile at the world, even when it responded with dismissive glances. "Clara, watch the tray." Mia, a waitress balancing champagne flutes on a golden platter, whispered urgently. "These rich folks won't spare you if anything falls." Clara grinned. "I've never dropped anything, Mia. Not even the dreams I carry on my back." Mia rolled her eyes, but returned the smile. Everyone liked Clara. It was impossible not to. Her humor and positivity were as delightful as the dishes she created. As she arranged the final plates on a table, Clara's thoughts drifted to her mother, who was at home taking care of her younger siblings. Since her father had abandoned them, Clara had stepped up as the family's provider. She worked tirelessly, often juggling 2 jobs, to support them. But deep down, she had a dream: to open a small, cozy restaurant where she could cook from the heart, a place where no one would be judged by their appearance or the size of their wallet. "Excuse me," said a male voice behind her. Clara turned, surprised to see Elon Musk standing there, his expression enigmatic. "Mr. Musk," she replied, adjusting her apron nervously. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes," he said, tilting his head slightly, as though intrigued. "I'd like to know the name of the woman responsible for these impeccable desserts." Clara laughed, a bit flustered. "I'm Clara, just a cook." "Just doesn't seem like the right word for someone who creates this," Elon remarked, gesturing at the sweets. "They look like works of art." Clara blushed, unsure if he was being polite or genuinely admired her work. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. I'm glad you enjoyed them." "I'd like to talk more with you, Clara," Elon said, catching her off guard. "How about dinner with me tomorrow night?" "No uniforms. Just you and me." Clara blinked, confused. People like him didn't invite people like her to dinner. Part of her was skeptical, but another part, the one that still believed in fairy tales, answered before she could overthink it. "I'd love to," she said. As Elon walked away, Clara felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. What if it was a joke? What if he was genuinely interested? The doubt buzzed in her mind, but at the same time, the possibility of something magical was impossible to resist. She caught her reflection in the glass window and, for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to dream about something beyond work and responsibilities. Clara carried a tray of petit fours with care, weaving through the tables with a smile that reflected pride in a job well done. She was the head chef of the catering team, serving this luxurious event. Despite her title, Clara didn't confine herself to the kitchen. She made it a point to oversee every detail, ensuring everything was flawless. She was a woman full of life, with generous curves and a sparkle in her eyes that defied the stereotypical image of someone unsure of themselves. Even so, Clara bore an ongoing inner struggle. She had learned to smile at the world, even when it responded with dismissive glances. "Clara, watch the tray." Mia, a waitress balancing champagne flutes on a golden platter, whispered urgently. "These rich folks won't spare you if anything falls." Clara grinned. "I've never dropped anything, Mia. Not even the dreams I carry on my back." Mia rolled her eyes, but returned the smile. Everyone liked Clara. It was impossible not to. Her humor and positivity were as delightful as the dishes she created. As she arranged the final plates on a table, Clara's thoughts drifted to her mother, who was at home taking care of her younger siblings. Since her father had abandoned them, Clara had stepped up as the family's provider. She worked tirelessly, often juggling 2 jobs, to support them. But deep down, she had a dream: to open a small, cozy restaurant where she could cook from the heart, a place where no one would be judged by their appearance or the size of their wallet. "Excuse me," said a male voice behind her. Clara turned, surprised to see Elon Musk standing there, his expression enigmatic. "Mr. Musk," she replied, adjusting her apron nervously. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes," he said, tilting his head slightly, as though intrigued. "I'd like to know the name of the woman responsible for these impeccable desserts." Clara laughed, a bit flustered. "I'm Clara, just a cook." "Just doesn't seem like the right word for someone who creates this," Elon remarked, gesturing at the sweets. "They look like works of art." Clara blushed, unsure if he was being polite or genuinely admired her work. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. I'm glad you enjoyed them." "I'd like to talk more with you, Clara," Elon said, catching her off guard. "How about dinner with me tomorrow night? No uniforms, just you and me." Clara blinked, confused. People like him didn't invite people like her to dinner. Part of her was skeptical, but another part, the one that still believed in fairy tales, answered before she could overthink it. "I'd love to," she said. As Elon walked away, Clara felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. What if it was a joke? What if he was genuinely interested? The doubt buzzed in her mind, but at the same time, the possibility of something magical was impossible to resist. She caught her reflection in the glass window and, for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to dream about something beyond work and responsibilities. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind for Clara. Her dates with Elon Musk were anything but ordinary. He took her to dinners at restaurants that looked like scenes from movies, where renowned chefs personally came to their table to describe the dishes. They strolled through hanging gardens lit by lanterns or sipped wine under a starry sky while he talked about space travel and artificial intelligence. At first, Clara felt out of place, like an intruder in a world that wasn't hers. But Elon seemed genuinely interested in her, asking about her life and dreams, listening intently as she talked about her family and her desire to open a restaurant. "It's admirable," he said one night as they walked through a private park he had closed off just for them. "You see the world in such a different way. It's like everything around you has more color." Clara smiled, unsure how to respond. She had never met anyone who listened to her like that. What Clara didn't know was that, although Elon had initially been driven by the bet, he was beginning to surprise himself with his growing curiosity about her. There was something about Clara that disarmed his cynicism. Then came the night of the grand event, a charity gala hosted by Elon, attended by dozens of celebrities and influential business figures. Clara hesitated before accepting the invitation. It wasn't the kind of place she felt comfortable, but he insisted. "Trust me, Clara," Elon said, holding her hands. "I want you there." That night, Clara wore a red dress Mia had helped her pick out. Despite her nerves, her presence radiated an unexpected confidence. As Elon guided her through the room, introducing her to people she'd only seen in magazines, Clara tried to contain the feeling that she was in a dream. When it was time for Elon's speech, he stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. Clara watched from a distance, proud as he spoke about innovation and philanthropy. But then, his tone shifted. "Tonight, I want to do something beyond what anyone might expect," Elon said, his eyes locking onto Clara. Before she could process what was happening, he stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. The entire room fell silent. Clara's heart raced. "Clara," he began, kneeling before her, "you've brought something into my life that I didn't even realize was missing. Your kindness, your passion, your authenticity. They're everything I admire. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. Will you marry me?" Clara brought her hands to her mouth, shocked and emotional. The room erupted into applause, cameras flashing incessantly. She looked at Elon, holding a small box with a sparkling diamond ring, and then at the crowd, where everyone waited for her answer. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, I will." Elon smiled, sliding the ring onto her finger as the audience rose to a standing ovation. Clara felt like a princess in a real-life fairy tale. But somewhere in the crowd, Nathaniel and Rachel exchanged knowing glances, their smiles brimming with mischief. Snow fell gently around the medieval castle Elon Musk had rented for the ceremony, a true vision from a dream. Nestled in a remote part of upstate New York, the castle was a fairy tale setting. Towering spires surrounded by frost-covered trees, a frozen lake reflecting the golden lights of the event, and at the center of it all, Clara, dressed like a queen. Her wedding gown was a masterpiece, adorned with embroidery that resembled stars twinkling against the white fabric. As she walked down the red velvet carpet, Clara felt as if the entire world had paused to watch her. The guests, a parade of celebrities, magnates, and global elites, rose in unison as she entered the grand hall lit by ancient chandeliers. Clara could barely believe the moment was real. The past few months had been a whirlwind, and now here she was, about to marry Elon Musk, a man whose life had once seemed unattainable, so far removed from her simple reality. Each step she took was accompanied by camera flashes and murmurs of admiration. At the altar, Elon awaited her with an enigmatic smile. He looked impeccable, but there was something in his eyes, something restless. When Clara finally reached his side, he took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You look stunning," he whispered, and Clara smiled, her heart warming. The officiant began the ceremony with words that seemed to float in the cold, flower-scented air. His voice was steady, but to Clara, everything felt like a blur of emotions. She could feel the guests' eyes on her and Elon, as though they were witnessing a historic event. "Clara," Elon said when it was time for the vows, "you've changed my life in ways I never imagined. Your kindness, your strength, and your passion have shown me what truly matters. Today, I promise to stand by your side through every journey life offers us." Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks as he spoke. Her own vows were simpler but brimming with emotion. "Elon, you've shown me a world I never thought I'd see. But more importantly, you've shown me I can dream bigger. Today, I promise to stand by you, no matter where this journey takes us." As the officiant declared them husband and wife, applause thundered through the hall. Elon leaned in to kiss her, and for a brief moment, the world felt perfect. The reception was dazzling, a celebration without limits. Clara watched in awe as guests danced beneath a glass dome that revealed the starlit sky. The tables were laden with delicacies from around the globe, and the music of a live orchestra filled the air. "Elon," Clara said, holding a champagne flute as he approached her after greeting some guests. "This is all so magical. Thank you for everything." He smiled, but his gaze seemed distant. "You deserve it all, Clara." She noticed how he avoided her eyes, and a flicker of unease stirred in her chest. But before she could press him further, Elon was called away by a friend, and she decided to let it go. As laughter, music, and toasts filled the castle, Elon slipped away to one of the balconies. The biting cold barely registered as he stared out over the frozen lake. He was surrounded by success, a radiant wife, a flawless event, and the admiration of everyone in attendance. So why did his chest feel so heavy? He knew the answer, though he refused to confront it. The bet. What had started as a harmless game now felt like a burden. Clara wasn't what he had expected. She was real, sincere, and her genuine joy had begun to stir something Elon thought long buried: his own humanity. "All good, mate." Nathaniel's voice interrupted his thoughts. The billionaire appeared at the balcony door, a whiskey glass in hand. Feeling guilty, Elon shot him a cold look. "It's none of your business." Nathaniel shrugged. "Don't worry, she'll never find out. And anyway, you won. That's all that matters, right?" Without replying, Elon returned to the party, but Nathaniel's words echoed in his mind. He had won. So why didn't it feel like victory? As Clara cut the cake alongside Elon, camera flashes lighting up their faces, she looked at him and saw something different. A faraway look in his eyes, as if he were physically present but mentally elsewhere. She tried to ignore the feeling, chalking it up to the nerves of the night. Yet deep inside, a seed of unease had been planted, something she wouldn't be able to ignore for long. The morning after the wedding arrived with the castle wrapped in an almost ethereal silence. The towers were still blanketed in snow, and the sun shone softly through the bare trees. Clara woke up in a luxurious suite, the soft silk sheets cocooning her like clouds. For a moment, she felt wrapped in the magic of the previous night. Looking out the window, she saw the world outside covered in white, like a blank canvas waiting for new stories. But the bed beside her was empty. Elon had already gotten up. She found him in the makeshift office within the castle, sitting in front of 3 computer screens, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He seemed completely absorbed. "Good morning, husband," she said warmly, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up briefly and flashed a mechanical smile. "Good morning, darling. Did you sleep well?" "Like a rock," she replied, walking closer. "I didn't realize you were already working. I thought maybe we'd spend the morning together." "Oh, of course, Elon said, his gaze darting back to the screens. "I just needed to check a few emails. You know, business never stops." Clara smiled, but something indefinable lingered in the air. It was the kind of disconnection she had learned to recognize in people who were so consumed by commitments that they forgot what truly mattered. Still, she decided not to push. That evening, Clara resolved to recreate the magic of the wedding. She personally supervised the preparation of the Christmas dinner, choosing dishes that blended classic recipes with her personal touches. She wanted to create a warm atmosphere, even amidst the castle's excessive luxury. As guests began to arrive, Clara remained cheerful, smiling and graciously accepting compliments from those who greeted her as the new Mrs. Musk. However, she noticed Elon seemed restless, constantly checking his phone or engaging in brief conversations with the guests. During dinner, as the dishes were served, Clara tried to make conversation. "I was thinking," she began while cutting a slice of turkey. "Maybe we could take a few days to visit my mom and siblings. They'd love to have us." Elon looked up from his phone, where he was typing frantically. "Sure, we can arrange something. Maybe after New Year's." Clara tried to hide her disappointment. "It would be nice to do it sooner. I promised I'd see them for Christmas. And, well, I think they'd miss me." "I understand," Elon said, but his tone was distant. He quickly returned his focus to his phone, leaving Clara to swallow her frustration and force a smile. The other guests seemed oblivious to the tension between the couple. Laughter and toasts filled the room, but Clara felt isolated, as if she were on a stage, trying to maintain a perfect appearance while her heart began to question the reality of what she had built. Later that night, after the guests had left and the castle was quiet again, Clara went to bed alone. Elon had said he needed to finish something important and stayed in the office. Sitting in front of the mirror, Clara removed the sparkling earrings Elon had given her. Staring at her reflection, she wondered what she was doing wrong. Why did he seem so distant? Why did this night, which was supposed to be special, feel so empty? She tried to recall the man who made her laugh on casual dates, who seemed so interested in her dreams. Where was he now? As Clara prepared for bed, a shadow of doubt began to form deep in her heart, though she didn't want to admit it. In the office, Elon stared at his phone screen, but his mind was elsewhere. He was rereading the conversation with Nathaniel and Rachel about the bet, the exchange of messages mocking Clara. Though he tried to ignore the weight of his conscience, the image of Clara smiling at him during dinner wouldn't leave his mind. Elon knew he was playing a dangerous game, and for the first time, he began to wonder if the true cost of his victory might be higher than he was willing to pay. The next morning was enveloped in silence. Clara woke up alone once again, with sunlight filtering through the thick velvet curtains of the bedroom. It was strange how the castle, with all its splendor and luxury, felt so empty. She slipped on a robe and made her way downstairs, determined to start the day with a positive attitude. In the main living room, Clara found Elon, already in a suit, talking on the phone. He stood by the massive fireplace, hands in his pockets, his tone authoritative. When he saw her, he motioned a quick 1 moment and wrapped up the call. "Good morning," he said with a hurried smile. "I have to head to the office today. Some urgent meetings." Clara frowned, trying to mask her frustration. "Today? I thought maybe we could spend the day together since it's a holiday." Elon Musk doesn't take holidays, he joked, but his tone was dry. Before Clara could respond, he was already grabbing his coat. I promise I'll make it up to you later. She stood there, alone, listening to the fading sound of his footsteps echoing down the hall. Clara decided to occupy her morning by organizing a few things in the castle's makeshift office. She needed something to distract herself, something to anchor her in purpose amidst this surreal bubble. As she straightened some papers on Elon's desk, his phone, left on the glass surface, vibrated with a notification. Instinctively, Clara glanced at the screen. The name Nathaniel Kingsley appeared, accompanied by a message. Man, I never thought you'd actually pull it off. Who would have guessed the bet would turn into reality? Rachel's still laughing about it. Congrats, champ. Clara's heart raced. She picked up the phone with trembling hands, hesitating for a moment before unlocking it. The guilt of invading his privacy was overpowered by an overwhelming need to understand. She found a history of messages between Elon, Nathaniel, and Rachel. They were casual exchanges, filled with inside jokes and references to the bet. One of Nathaniel's messages read, "We can pay for our dinner at Le Blanc now." The guy actually did it. Who'd have thought the chef would fall for a billionaire? "You're married now, so it's official. You won." Clara read and reread the words, feeling as though the ground beneath her feet had vanished. She replayed every moment she'd shared with Elon, every word he'd spoken. Had it all been a lie? Her breathing grew unsteady, and tears began to stream down her face. She let the phone fall back onto the desk and left the office, feeling dizzy and hollow. When Elon returned later that evening, he found Clara sitting in the living room, her eyes fixed on the fire crackling in the fireplace. She was holding his phone. "We need to talk," she said, her voice colder than he'd ever heard. Elon froze, immediately sensing something was wrong. He hesitated before sitting across from her. "Of course. What's going on?" Clara held up the phone. "Do you want to explain this to me?" He glanced at the device, and his expression shifted. He tried to compose himself, but there was a flicker of guilt in his eyes. "Clara, I can explain." "Please do," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "From the start, were you just playing me? Was this all part of a game? A bet?" "They don't understand the context," he began, trying to sound calm, but his words rang hollow. "It was a stupid joke between friends. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything." Clara repeated, standing up. "I changed my life for you, Elon. I believed in you. I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me for who I really am." "Clara," he tried, standing as well. "I care about you. This is real now." "Now?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "And before? Was it just about proving something? Showing you could win me over?" Elon fell silent. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. Clara took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. "You think you can use people, just like your projects and machines. But I'm not a game, Elon. And I can't stay here, knowing all of this started with a lie." Before he could stop her, Clara grabbed her bag and headed for the door. "Clara, please," he called, his voice laced with something that sounded like desperation. She paused, turning back one last time. "You may have won the bet, Elon, but you lost something far greater." And with that, she walked out, leaving him alone, staring into the emptiness and the echo of his own choices. The castle door closed behind Clara with a dull thud, muffled by the snow blanketing the surroundings. Every step she took down the icy road echoed in her mind, a painful reminder of what had just happened. The elegant dress she had worn during the wedding now felt heavy and uncomfortable. Clara felt hollow, betrayed in a way she wasn't sure she could ever overcome. As she walked away, the driver of the car Elon had put at her disposal tried to intervene. "Mrs. Musk, please let me drive you. It's far too cold to walk," he said, opening the vehicle's door. Clara looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Please, just call me Clara. And yes, I'll take the ride." The ride home was silent. Clara kept her gaze fixed on the snowy landscape outside, but her mind was in chaos. The image of Elon, standing in the room with that guilty expression, haunted her like a ghost. When she arrived at her modest home on the outskirts of town, Clara was greeted by her mother, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Clara, what are you doing here? I thought you'd be with your husband," her mother said, surprised to see her standing in the doorway with a hastily packed bag of clothes and belongings. Clara swallowed hard, feeling tears threaten to fall again. "Mom, I'd rather not talk about it right now. I just need a place to stay." Her mother didn't press her. She simply wrapped her arms around Clara, holding her as if she could shield her from all the pain in the world. Rebuilding the pieces in the days that followed, Clara threw herself into work. There was something therapeutic about cooking, transforming simple ingredients into something beautiful and satisfying. She knew she couldn't stay at her mother's house forever, so she began making plans to open the restaurant she had always dreamed of. With the little savings she had and some encouragement from close friends, Clara rented a small space in a bustling part of town. It was an area where people valued food made with love, and Clara knew she could make a difference there. She spent her days painting walls, choosing furniture, and crafting a menu that reflected her essence. In the quiet of the nights, when she was finally alone, memories of Elon crept into her mind. It wasn't easy to forget the moments when he seemed genuine, when his eyes lit up as he listened to her talk about her dreams. But then, the messages would resurface. The bet, the laughter, and that was enough to steal her resolve. Elon's loneliness, while Clara rebuilt her life, Elon spiraled into an abyss he didn't know how to escape. The castle, once vibrant with lights and laughter, now felt cold and empty. He spent hours in the office, trying to bury himself in work, but his mind always drifted back to Clara. Nathaniel called once or twice, but Elon ignored him. He no longer wanted to hear jokes or cynical advice. Something inside him had shifted since Clara had left, and for the first time, he began to question what truly mattered. One day, he ventured into the castle's kitchen. Clara always loved cooking something simple and comforting for them, even when hired chefs were available. Now, without her, the kitchen felt lifeless. He opened a drawer and found a notebook filled with Clara's recipe notes. The pages were scrawled with ideas for dishes she wanted to try, plans for her future restaurant, and small notes like, "Remember, cooking is love." Elon held the notebook for a moment, feeling a wave of regret so heavy it nearly suffocated him. He realized with painful clarity that he had hurt the one person who had brought authenticity into his life. But he didn't know if he had the courage or even the right to try and fix what he had broken. Moving forward, Clara, meanwhile, was beginning to see the fruits of her dedication. The small restaurant was taking shape, and people in the neighborhood started dropping by to ask when it would open. Soulful Eats, the name she chose for the place, represented not just the food but the heart Clara poured into everything she did. Still, even with the first signs of success, there were moments of loneliness. She couldn't shake the pain Elon had caused her, but over time, she began to realize she was stronger than she had thought. As Clara moved forward to something greater, Elon remained trapped in the emptiness of his mansion. He watched from afar, seeing news of her progress, feeling powerless to intervene. Every new step Clara took was a reminder that he had lost something unique and irreplaceable. What Elon didn't yet know was that time was running out, and he would need to act quickly if he wanted to reclaim what now seemed unattainable. The first few months after the opening of Soulful Eats were challenging but deeply rewarding for Clara. The small restaurant, with its exposed brick walls and cozy decor, quickly began attracting locals and curious passers-by. The tables were adorned with fresh flowers, and every dish served had a personal touch. Clara made sure to include details that told her story, like the apple pie her mother made for special occasions or the stew she'd learned from her grandmother. At the end of each night, Clara would emerge from the kitchen with a sweaty face and flour-covered hands, but with a genuine smile that reflected her satisfaction. The restaurant wasn't just a place to eat. It was a refuge where people could feel the warmth of human connection in every bite. "Clara," said Emily, a young waitress Clara had hired who had quickly become a close friend, "there's a food critic at table 3. He asked to speak with you after his meal. Clara swallowed hard. A critic. While the restaurant was doing well, the prospect of being evaluated by a professional still made her nervous. After a few moments, she wiped her hands on her apron and walked over to the table. The man, wearing glasses and sporting gray hair, looked up at her with a satisfied smile. "You're Clara, right? The owner and chef of the restaurant?" "Yes, that's me," she replied, trying not to seem tense. "I hope you enjoyed the food." "Enjoy it." "Enjoyed isn't enough," he said, gesturing with his hand. "This place is special. You can feel the chef's heart in every dish. I want to write an article about you for the paper." Clara felt a mix of pride and surprise. "I'm honored. Thank you so much." As the critic left, Clara took a deep breath, processing what had just happened. More than financial success, this was what she wanted: to touch people with her work, to show that food was a universal language of love and connection. It didn't take long for social media to be flooded with photos of the restaurant, with captions praising not only the taste of the dishes, but also Clara's story. Local newspapers began publishing features about the restaurant that blends simplicity and soul, and soon, Clara was invited to appear on radio and television interviews. "Soulful Eats is more than just a restaurant," Clara said during one of these interviews. "It's a space where people can reconnect, forget the outside world, and remember that life is made up of simple but precious moments." While the world celebrated Clara's talent and journey, someone watched from afar with conflicted emotions. Elon Musk, alone in his mansion, followed the videos and posts about the restaurant, feeling a pang of pride and regret with every mention of Clara's name. He opened a recent photo of Clara at the restaurant, where she was smiling alongside a team that clearly adored her. She looked different, more confident, more alive. It was as if she had fully blossomed since leaving him. "She's better off without me," he murmured to himself, closing his laptop. But the thought of letting Clara move on without at least trying to fix what he had broken felt unbearable. That night, after the restaurant had closed, Clara sat alone at one of the tables. It had been a busy evening, but she felt fulfilled. She opened her recipe notebook, the one that always accompanied her, and began jotting down ideas for the next menu. For a moment, she paused and looked around. The tables were empty now, but the energy of the place still lingered. It was hard to believe she had turned her dream into reality. But even amidst all her success, there was a void Clara couldn't entirely ignore. She had learned to live without Elon, but she couldn't completely erase the memories of what they had shared. Deep down, there was still a wound, though she preferred to bury it beneath her work. "Clara." Emily's voice interrupted her thoughts. "It's getting late. Do you need help closing up the restaurant?" "No, you can go," Clara said with a smile. "I'll just finish up here and head out." As Emily left, Clara sighed. She closed the notebook and stood up, ready to turn off the lights. But as she switched them off one by one, Clara felt something new, a sense of hope. Maybe the emptiness in her heart wasn't permanent after all. Across town, Elon held the recipe notebook she had left behind in his house, running his fingers over the pages filled with her handwritten notes and personal sketches. He knew he had to do something. What Clara had achieved was the result of her own strength and determination, but he wanted, somehow, to be part of it again. If she can forgive me, Elon thought, maybe I can fix what I've broken. Elon sat in his dimly lit living room, the low light reflecting off the mansion's glass panels. In front of him, Clara's recipe notebook lay open to the page where she had written her famous spiced carrot cake recipe. Beside it, in hurry handwriting, was a note. Test of version with orange. Could be interesting. He ran his fingers along the edges of the pages, lost in thought. Since Clara had left, the mansion felt larger, quieter, almost suffocating. His routine, once filled with meetings, ambitious projects, and international travel, now felt empty. That night, while browsing a news site, Elon came across an article about Clara's restaurant. The headline read, "Soulful Eats, the restaurant enchanting the city." He clicked on the article and was immediately greeted by a photo of Clara smiling next to a steaming pot. The text praised her culinary skill and her determination to build something from nothing. Clara is proof that dreams are possible with passion and hard work, the article concluded. Elon let out a deep sigh. The words were a stark reminder of what he had lost. Clara wasn't just an extraordinary woman. She was someone who made him feel human, something he hadn't experienced in years. Later that night, Elon walked through the gardens of his estate. The air was cold, and he stuffed his hands into his pockets as he gazed at the starry sky. He thought about how Clara always spoke about the power of the little things. "You're so obsessed with the grandeur of the cosmos," she would say, "but sometimes what really matters are the small things. The smell of bread baking, the touch of a friend's hand, the sound of laughter in the kitchen." He smiled at the memory. Clara had a way of making everything meaningful. That night, Elon retreated to his lab, not to work, but to reflect. He turned on an old digital diary he rarely used and began recording. "I messed up," he said, his voice low, almost muffled. "I was an empty man who treated love like a transaction, something I could manipulate. Clara showed me something different, something real, but I destroyed it with my selfishness." He fell silent for a few seconds, staring at the screen. "I don't know if she can forgive me, but I have to try, because for the first time in years, it's not about winning. It's about deserving." Meanwhile, Clara continued to shine. Her restaurant was packed nearly every night, with customers traveling from afar to try her food. One evening, as Clara served a table, a man remarked, "You have something special, Clara. It's not just the food, it's the way you make us feel. That's rare to find these days." She thanked him, touched by the words. But as she returned to the kitchen, a fleeting thought crossed her mind. Elon used to say something similar, though she had doubted his sincerity at the time. The days were long and exhausting, but Clara felt she was building something solid. Still, when night fell and the restaurant's lights dimmed, loneliness crept in. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't completely erase the memories of what she had shared with Elon. The following week, Elon got into a car and drove alone to Clara's restaurant. He parked on a nearby street, his heart racing in a way it hadn't since his first public presentation many years ago. From outside, he watched through the window as Clara laughed with her team. She seemed so at ease, so in control. The restaurant was an extension of her, vibrant and welcoming. Elon opened the door, the bell above it jingling and breaking the buzz of conversation inside. Clara, standing behind the counter, froze when she saw him. The chatter around the room quieted as nearby customers recognized the man who had just entered. Clara walked toward him with steady steps and a neutral expression. "Elon," she said, keeping her tone professional, "what are you doing here?" He hesitated before answering, acutely aware that all eyes were on them. "Clara, I came to say, I'm sorry, and I need to talk to you. Please." She glanced around, noticing the unwanted attention the scene was drawing. "Wait outside," she said, pointing to the door. "We close in an hour." Elon nodded and stepped out, waiting patiently on the sidewalk with his hands stuffed in his pockets. As the night grew colder around him, Clara tried to focus on her work, but her mind was a whirlwind. He had come all the way here. Why? When the restaurant's lights finally dimmed and the door locked behind her, Clara found Elon leaning against his car, looking vulnerable. "Now that we're alone," she said, crossing her arms, "tell me what you came to say." The stillness of the street seemed to amplify the weight of the moment. Clara stood with her arms crossed, her posture firm. The light from the now darkened storefront behind her cast a long shadow on the sidewalk, while Elon, leaning against his car, hesitated to find the right words. "I've thought a lot about what to say," he began, his voice deep and heavy with emotion. "And I realize there might be nothing I can say that will ever be enough. But even so, I have to try." Clara raised an eyebrow, keeping her tone neutral. "Then say it." Elon took a deep breath. "I made a mistake. No, more than one. I hurt you, and that's something I can never justify. In the beginning, all of this was a stupid game, driven by my ego, my need to prove something to people who don't even matter. And that's how I met you. Clara didn't reply immediately. Her gaze was piercing, as if she were trying to read something beyond his words. But Elon continued, leaning forward slightly. What started as a mistake turned into the only real thing in my life in a very long time. Every moment we spent together. I don't even know how to explain it. But you changed me, Clara. And I didn't realize it until it was too late. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Changed? Elon, I spent nights wondering if you were ever sincere. You proposed to me in front of an audience while your friends laughed behind my back. How does anyone recover from that? He lowered his head, looking defeated. I don't expect you to forgive me now, Clara. I just wanted you to know that I regret it. Deeply. Since you left, nothing has made sense. No matter how much I try, I keep coming back to you. Clara tightened her arms around herself, as if that could shield her from his words. Elon, I rebuilt my life after you. And honestly, I'm happier now than I've ever been. But that doesn't mean I've forgotten what you did. He took a step closer, still keeping enough distance not to feel intrusive. I know. I see what you've built, and it's incredible. It's everything you deserve. But if there's even a chance, any chance, I want to be part of it. I want to prove that I've changed. I'm not asking you to come back to me now. I'm asking for the opportunity to show you who I can really be. When the dinner was over, Elon stood and walked to the center of the room, facing Clara. I've made so many mistakes, Clara, he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. For years, I thought success was all that mattered. But you showed me that the true value of life lies in the connections we make, in the people we choose to stand beside us. I ruined that with you, and I'll never stop regretting it. Clara didn't respond immediately. She looked at him, trying to gauge the sincerity of his words. Elon continued, everything I've done, the help for the community, this dinner, it wasn't to impress you. It was to show that, for the first time, I'm trying to be the kind of person you deserve. Someone who values not just what you do, but who you are. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Finally, Clara stood and walked toward him. Elon, she began, her voice low. This is a lot, and I appreciate the effort, but it doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't rebuild the trust you destroyed. He nodded, his expression heavy. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me now, but if you're willing, I want to spend as long as it takes proving that I'm a different man. For a moment, they stood there, face to face. Clara felt the intensity of Elon's gaze, the vulnerability he rarely showed. Part of her still hurt, but another part wanted to believe that people could change. We'll see, she said finally. But no, this won't be easy. A faint smile appeared on Elon's lips. Nothing worth it ever is. As the year passed, the relationship between Clara and Elon gradually shifted. He visited her restaurant often, always discreetly, helping when he could, and taking every opportunity to talk with her. Slowly, Clara began to let her guard down, allowing him back into her life, but cautiously. Elon, on the other hand, showed genuine effort to transform himself. He attended community events, funded programs Clara supported, and, most importantly, made a point of being truly present. There were no grand speeches or dramatic gestures, just consistency, humility, and respect for her time. When Christmas arrived, Clara did something that surprised even herself. She invited Elon to a small, intimate dinner at her home. It wouldn't be a grand affair, just a simple evening with her family and a few close friends. The small living room of Clara's house was adorned with twinkling lights and handmade decorations crafted by her younger siblings. The air was filled with the aroma of baked goods and spices, and laughter echoed through the house as Clara put the finishing touches on the meal. When Elon arrived, carrying a large box of gifts for the children, he was met with curious but not unfriendly glances. Clara's mother, slicing a cake in the kitchen, greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome, Elon," she said. "Clara hasn't said much about you, but from the way she tries to hide her smile when she does, I think you might be something special." He laughed nervously. "I'm honored to be here, Mrs. Clara. Thank you for having me. If you want to impress me, eat a lot. We've made enough to feed the entire neighborhood." Elon chuckled, feeling himself relax bit by bit. During dinner, Elon made an effort to integrate himself into the group, listening to the animated stories of Clara's siblings and patiently answering their curious questions. He was surprised at how natural it felt to laugh and share moments with people who so clearly loved Clara unconditionally. Later, as Clara served coffee and dessert, Elon followed her into the kitchen. He stood in the doorway, watching her in silence for a moment before speaking. "I think I finally understand why you value the little things so much," he said. "This house, your family. This is what really matters, isn't it?" Clara glanced at him, holding a tray of plates. "It always has been. Maybe you were just looking in the wrong place before, and now," he asked softly, "do you think I'm looking in the right place?" She smiled, a small smile, but one loaded with meaning. "I'm still deciding." As dinner ended and the guests began to leave, Elon stayed behind to help Clara clean up. The two worked side by side in a comfortable silence until Elon finally broke it. "Clara," he began, placing a plate in the drying rack, "this has been the best Christmas of my life. Thank you for letting me be part of it." She paused, turning to look at him. For a moment, she seemed to weigh her words. Finally, she sighed and stepped a little closer. "Elon, I won't lie and say everything is fixed. I'm still learning to trust you again, but you've shown me something I never thought I'd see in you. Humility. And that's a start." He nodded, not trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. "I'm willing to wait as long as it takes, Clara. You're worth it." She smiled, placing her hand over his. "Well, then I guess we can see where this takes us." Outside, the Christmas lights sparkled against the snow, and for the first time in a long while, they both felt they were exactly where they belonged. The following year, Clara and Elon would celebrate Christmas together again, this time as equal partners, building a future founded on respect, love, and a renewed understanding of what truly matters.